Hi, my name is Therese. I want to welcome you to our third reading from the book Dialogues with the Devil by Taylor Caldwell, and the teaching that is coming forth through these readings on the psychology of evil and the nature of good and how we can fully claim that God identity that we are. We are going to be reading the next letter from Lucifer to Archangel Michael. Greetings to my brother Michael, who is very tender and brave, but alas, most naive. Let me repeat as I have repeated always, if my entry into heaven must be accompanied by the souls of men, then I prefer my hells. So he is not going to budge this point in time 1 inch, and he is once again trying to get Michael on that point of pride. He says, at least there I torment my insulters and the insulters of our Father, and this is an exuberant delight, one I fear you will never know. Delight most assuredly. It is a joy which I cannot explain in words you would understand. Sufficient it is to say that I play with those souls as they played with their victims, and with the same mercilessness, only 1,000 times enhanced. When they beseech me for pity, I listen with ecstasy to their cries. Beasts, animals, to think that they too possess immortal life. They grovel before me and clutch my garments, and I spurn them with my foot. Sometimes I admit a few of their wisest to my dark tabernacle and converse with them for the pleasure of listening to their stupidity, their errant foolishness. Often I summon the great among them and urge them to speak of their fame on Terra. And it is an enormous amusement. They say to me, I did not believe in you, nor in God, yet you manifestly are. And they marvel. I conjure their lives before them, and I say, there was I in that apparition when you planned this or that, and you heard my voice and took rapture in it. Why did you hearken to me, beast of beasts? They answer, falling before my face. I believed in nothing but myself and my own grandeur and my own will. But they believed in me. It's important to understand this as well, because we know there are many different levels to the astral plane, different levels of hells that souls end up in based on where their consciousness is fixed during their life and at the end of their life when they are taken from that screen of life. And we know that there are souls that embody, that come back into embodiment, into baby bodies, and some come from the astral plane to re-embody, who were not in the heaven world, who are not in the etheric retreats, and yet they get another opportunity to embody physically. And so they have been engaged in this kind of conversation, in this kind of an anti-faith manifestation of faith in the devil, in the deified energy veil, before coming back in. So we can pray for these ones and pray for all of us to be delivered from this consciousness that does not want to really believe in God, but wants to believe in the devil, in the deified energy veil, as the voice of our tempter, as the voice of our weakness, as the voice of our shame. They repent, but it is too late. They came to me not through august sins, which at least possess a measure of grandeur and imagination, but through sins so mean and contemptible that they are below the comprehension of the lowest of creatures on Terra. The serpent in the forest is not as poisonous as man. The rabid bat is not as mad and loathsome. The toothed shark is not so foul a scavenger, for none of these can lie. That is a prerogative of man only. Man always takes on the aspect of the serpent, the bat, and the shark, and their habits. He is more dreadful than these, for he lacks their innocence, and he knows what he does, and he does it with enthusiasm and passion. Now I would like to interject a little teaching here, which has to do with the fact that these elementals in nature that reflect these vicious qualities, poisonous qualities, and very ugly qualities are actually reflecting in the elemental essence the misqualified energy that mankind has partaken of and engaged in. And so in golden ages in the past, when people were functioning at a level of Christ consciousness, you wouldn't find these kind of creatures in the etheric planes of the heaven world and adjacent to earth, where there is golden age going on. There is not going to be sharks and tarantulas and scorpions and bats and all of those kinds of things. And so we need to understand that elemental life does reflect the emotions and energies of mankind, both in the highest forms and in the lowest forms. Lucifer says, "It is through his lies that man comes to me, his lies of the flesh and the spirit, for untruth is a perversion and man is a pervert. He is the incarnation of the lie, which is myself, and all the evil that he does is his corruption of truth." Now I want you to understand that as we read this, we can see that every time that we shame ourselves with the same kind of dialogue that Lucifer is expressing towards man, we are in essence engaging in that Luciferian consciousness. And so we know that shame is not of God, shame is pride, and what we want is a true sense of repentance, a true sense of remorse that is based on love and on trying to do better, not an ongoing tirade of shame. Lucifer says, "You have asked for my pity on him. If I did not love you, Michael, I should feel myself forever insulted and should then hate you." Now he's trying to manipulate Michael here with some syrupy sympathy. "My demons look upon the bountiful harvests of the souls of men who swarm through my fiery portals each hour, and they look with revulsion. For never, even among demons, was ever a spirit so malicious, so imbued with hatred for his fellows as the spirit of man. In his life on Terra he prates of love and esteems it with his tongue as the greatest of virtues. Yet never was a creature so loveless in his heart, even when announcing love to the heavens. He crowds before the altars he has raised to God, and the lie nestles in his flesh, and the repudiation and disbelief, and even when he cries Hosanna, he chuckles in secret at his own perfidy. He loves that perfidy. He believes it gives him intellectual stature. He looks upon the crucified Lord, and it needs no whisper from me to make him speak in his spirit and deny. He has many arguments, and they amuse him. Not all men, you would say, Michael. Michael, that miserable little stream which flows to heaven, is hardly a trickle compared with the great river that pours down to me." He's talking about the souls who move to different levels and octaves of consciousness when they leave embodiment. "You have not seen their appalled faces when they encounter me, who greet them thus. Welcome to your spiritual home, you who have denied all things. Still, it is very strange. Though they did not believe in our Father, they truly believed in me, though they did not know it. You serve only that in which you believe, with knowledge or without knowledge. They would have been amazed to encounter you, Michael, and would have marveled, but they do not marvel at me. They recognize me at once. They have seen my face countless times, and they know all my lineaments. nor is hell unfamiliar to them. They created a mirage of it on Terra, and they know every alley, every darksome passage, every icy lake, every mountain of fire, every gloomy shadow, every city of death, every pool of corruption. For while I established my hells, it was man who lifted up the walls and established the noisome places, and lit the fires and froze the waters. It is therefore no mystery that he recognizes every path and sits down in his chosen spot to weep and repent. He built the house in which he dwells. At least that is a species of freedom, for man did not build heaven. For in participation there is liberty, and complete liberty reigns in hell. You see how this truth is taken for a twist. Also see how we do create the environment that we will occupy, whether here or in the spirit world, the so-called spirit world, where we are no longer in embodiment, but our consciousness lives on. So what we build is where we will reside. Have I not said it through the ages? You have called my creatures slaves, but slaves do not build to their design, and men build the designs of the infernos. It is by God's grace when man reaches heaven, and not by his merits, and so perhaps not even his will. But men will to dwell with me, and where there is will there is freedom. Has not our Father declared that himself? He is the paradox of paradoxes. And so here Lucifer is using the truth about free will and liberty to twist it into an anti-freedom and an anti-liberty that is damnation. He says, there are no contradictions in hell. There are no wonders, for everything in hell is familiar to the souls of men. And it's true that if you go to many parts of the earth, these parts of the earth are really congruent with the astral plane and with the different levels of hell. Depending on where you go, you can literally be simultaneously in hell, and in some cases simultaneously in heaven. If you go to the high mountains and to places like the Grand Teton Retreat and other places where there are great focuses of light that penetrate the heaven world, that cohabitate that same time and space continuum on different frequencies. Now when you walk through the alleyways, you go to the bars, you walk through the downtown areas that are dark and creepy, especially after dark, you are literally in places that are adjacent with the astral plane, with the levels of hell. And then there are certain places that will be very, very dark, places where people are partaking in all kinds of extremely harmful drugs. When you look at drugs like meth, or this drug in Russia called crocodile, or these other substances, and you see the squalor and the places that people are living in, they are in the lower levels of hell, even still in a physical body. And then if you look at some of these circles of our government and other governments of the world, and all of their wealth, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or in Saudi Arabia, it's still a form of hell. That consciousness is such a consciousness that is closed and rigid and dark. I walked through the White House and I could feel the heaviness, the oppressive feeling there, the darkness there. It was not intended to be that way. And it contrasted with the incredible light that you could feel when you rise to the top of the Washington Monument. And so here in Washington, D.C., you could experience the light of the heaven world adjacent to that top of the Washington Monument where the Liberty Flame pulses. And you can also walk through the White House where, because of the darkness of the leadership that has taken over this nation time and time again, and not just the presidents, but those who are the advisors, and the overall level of corruption that goes on at deep levels, there is a heaviness there that basically cannot be denied by those who can feel the spiritual vibrations, and so can't be hidden, like Jesus said, you can't hide. And so we see those levels of heaven, we see those levels of hell congruent with the physical plane when we look at some of the magazines and the news that is paraded before the eyes of the people, the different rock concerts and all of these different things. Hell becomes very familiar, and when souls pass from the screen of life, they are completely comfortable with it, unless they were uncomfortable with it in the earth plane, in the physical, in their physical body. And so you can see that there is a dramatic attempt to try to entice young people, youth, to embrace more and more levels of hell and to acclimatize to them and to become familiar with them. And if we look at what people are familiar with now and acclimatize to, people in schools, in elementary and middle schools now, playing games like the Hunger Games or Twilight vampire games and so forth, comes as nothing now to these kids. Now, 50, 60 years ago, that wasn't the case. 20 years ago even, that wasn't the case. And so we see this acclimatizing of souls to the levels of hell while in embodiment. And then when they pass from embodiment, hell is very familiar, unless they are, of course, rescued by angels of light because of the light in their heart and their own free will seeking and yearning for the light, which is under so much attack. And so Lucifer says, there is the complete security which men have always craved on Terra, but which our Father lovingly denies them, for God is the creator of infinite and opposing variety, delicious contrasts, innocent comicalities, awesome inequalities, enchanting absurdities, paradoxes, fearsome challenges, exciting uncertainties. This, I admit, stimulates color and splendor and merriment and marvelings and stern beauties and liveliness and trembling anticipations. What Lucifer is talking about here is the law of transcendence, that all life is subjected to in God. We are continuously on a process of self-transcendence because God is continuously transcending himself, herself, themselves, and the universe is continuously expanding. And so there is a continuous change in God, and that change that comes through the passing of initiations of greater and greater levels of godhood and mastery and expansion and creativity is what Lucifer here is mocking, and what people often complain about as the challenges of the spiritual path. And so he's saying here, you don't have to go through these challenges when you're in hell. Everything is very simple, and it gives you that stability that people yearn for at the subconscious level. We have to understand that in our subconscious as children, we were looking for security, and a security that comes from the automatic coping mechanisms of our family tree and our family patterns. These are human-made security systems that we are looking for and that we try to recreate. And when we are embracing that walk with the superconscious self, with our God self, the only security is in really letting go and letting God as we co-create with God, and having that faith. And faith is something that, even though is the fullest security that we can ever have, is perceived as an insecurity by many within the psychology, because it basically pits our subconscious coping mechanisms, our human fight-flight response, the animal side of our nature, with the higher side of our Christic nature. And so, something to keep in mind here, there is again much truth in this lie. And so he says, this, I admit, stimulates color and splendor and merriment and marvelings and stern beauties and liveliness and trembling anticipations. But in hell there is nothing to anticipate. There is no variety. There is no insecurity. There are pain and boredom. And boredom is the most monstrous of punishments. Beside it, pain is a relief. So, despite the rumors of the ignorant on Terra, there is little pain in my hells, except for futile regret. There is no future, yet there is time, endless time, and endless sameness. The pious in Terra speak only of the agonies of hell, and they exist, for they are pleasure. That's completely twisted. Have they seen my glorious cities, bewitching, extravagant? They are filled with the delights of Terra, but immeasurably enhanced. Millions newly arrived look upon them with eagerness and smiles, and rush to inhabit them. The lavish city in which I live is a city that lived in the hot imaginations of men, filled with every satisfaction of their vile hearts, concupiscent lust of their flesh, every dream of their envious hearts. You can imagine something that Cosmopolitan magazine or GQ might have created. Something that the Mercedes-Benz advertisers might really like to advertise. There are glittering houses heaped with gleaming treasures, and ballrooms and arenas and theaters and stadia and shops to make any merchant weep with greed, and towering castles of every perversion, and streets of magnitude filled with music, and tables everywhere crowded with saucy viands and bottomless vessels of wine, and demons to be slavish lackeys. There are vistas of heroic mountains like alabaster, and sparkling forests vibrating with song, and valleys lush as velvet, and rivers like gilt. Here souls of the damned are free to come and go, to sport, to converse, to play, to partake of all my captivations. They are free to argue their childish controversies, to engage in the pursuits that enthrall them on Terra, to discuss strange things with the inhabitants of worlds of which they never dreamed, to invent new theories and excited hypotheses, to seduce beautiful female demons. There is not an alluring vice that is denied them, not a passion which is not immediately gratified. Ah, I tell you, Michael, they often mistake hell for heaven at first. Now, what Lucifer is going to explain is how ultimately this becomes a form of hell, because the part of us that is divine cannot remain complete and satisfied in this kind of an environment. There is that search for something more. There is that need for self-transcendence that is deep within us. And what we have to understand here is that not all of hell is these tormented places that you imagine with devils and pitchforks and so forth. And there are different levels of the astral plane, and some of the higher levels of the astral plane look almost heaven-like. It's like a Beatles song, "Here Comes the Sun," and so forth. The high levels of the astral plane, it's a parody of the heaven world, but the vibration is not the same. And so, what we also have to understand is that there are many people who may at one point or another have been on the spiritual path in earnest and then get tired of it, get tired of the struggle to surmount these difficulties within the psyche and to pass the higher initiations that come after years on the spiritual path. And so when people fall off the path, they tend to pursue once again these levels of worldly satisfaction, and they attempt to content themselves with perhaps fine wine and fine music and fine clothes and all of these things, and because they're not really harming anyone, they figure everything is just fine. But just like in these levels of hell, there becomes a lassitude with that. So it is with the souls of those who are looking for the platitudes of good living as a substitute for the hard work that it can sometimes be on the spiritual path, especially when you are having to approach the initiations of the crucifixion that will ultimately lead to the resurrection, that are not pleasant for the subconscious and for the human consciousness, and where you have to face all of that and more. Well, I tell you, Michael, they often mistake hell for heaven at first. But pleasure never changes in hell, never diminishes, can never aspire to greater diversions such as exalted meditation and reflection, never knows an end. Nothing is withheld. There is no struggle, there are no heart burnings, no room for ambition and achievement. All is equal, all is accessible to every soul. That's the definition of socialism or communism, right? Where everyone is equal and entitled to equality, equal everything, because there is no need for striving. There is no applause, for no soul exceeds another in stature. No face is different from any other face. Nothing is unique or creative or deserving of acclaim. No soul is worthy, for all are worthless, each clad in the robes of doom, unchanging uniformity. Where one soul cannot excel another in any fashion, ennui results with a mysterious terror, for God created all souls to strive and excel, and thus be free and develop priceless individuality. But it is my democracy. At last, in despair and desperate boredom, my doomed prey for the less attractive portions of my sovereignty, where there is pain and weeping and gnashing of teeth. Grief at the final hour becomes more desirable than pleasure, for it has needless ramifications. At the last I can engage these damned in my service, the seduction of souls yet living on terra, meaning that they are engaged in a work from the astral plane to basically influence souls, like we read in the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis, influence souls from the astral plane, tying into our emotional body, from the mental plane, even the lower mental plane, though it's usually actually from the astral plane, giving those mental tapes that appear to be thinking. So I'm self-correcting here. They give us these mental tapes at the level of our subconscious that appear to be thinking, that appear to be from the mental plane, and in fact they are at the emotional level, at the level of the astral plane, masquerading as our thinking. Grief at the final hour becomes more desirable than pleasure, for it has needless ramifications. At the last I can engage these damned in my service, the seduction of souls yet living on terra. At least there is some excitement in this. Envy and hatred and resentment are enlisted in my employ. For who of the damned can rejoice to see a soul escape him? What rejoicings there are in hell when more of the corrupted fall into the pit! If the heavenly hosts are joyous when a soul is saved, how much more are the damned joyous when a soul falls? Do not ask me why. Did I create man? His perverted mind often makes me recoil with disgust. You would say I perverted him. No, I only tempt. With what glee my damned introduce the newly doomed to my hells. They look upon their dismayed faces and hug themselves with rapture. They peer for tears and drink them avidly. Now, we can say, oh, this is something that only happens in hell, right? But we have to look at what we would call the spiteful joy that people have, that we have, at whatever level, even if it's just an inkling, when we see one or another of our brothers or sisters on earth faltering or failing or having a hard time, that spiteful joy that is within each individual at some level of our consciousness that we must work to overcome is kernel of this. And so we can work on this right now while we're still in embodiment, so that we can overcome this and not create that for ourselves at the conclusion of this life. They look upon their dismayed faces and hug themselves with rapture. They peer for tears and drink them avidly. They take the newly doomed by the hand and shout with happiness at the recoiling when horrors are confronted. This is the only satisfaction in hell, and it is a satisfaction most deeply encouraged. Eventually, they all crave death and extinction. I am more compassionate than our Father. I would often give them true death. But our Father cursed them with eternal life, and so who is in truth the most merciless? Now, this is not exactly correct, and the truth of the matter is after a certain allotment of lifetimes and rounds in time and space, a soul that will not move toward the light and turn back to the light does go through that second death process, where there is the dissolution of the soul, the canceling out of the soul in this fiery presence of God. The same process, the same light that crystallizes the soul who is one with God into the ascension is the light in the process of Alpha and Omega that dissolves the soul, who has nothing left of God identity, into the second death. And so there is a point in time where this craving for death and extinction can ultimately take place, and it is a great sadness when this does happen to souls. There is no rejoicing in heaven when a soul passes through the second death, even if it is Lucifer or Satan or the like. Lucifer says, God cannot withdraw from his own law, therefore he cannot rescue my damned. When he gave immortality to man, did he know to what he had condemned him? Alas, alas, there are times when I would grant them death. Is your question then not answered? I am no paradox, as is our Father. Had I created man, God forbid, I should not have given him the free will to be damned if he desired. I should have made him obedient and docile, a gay little creature, who could not know the difference between good and evil, and therefore could have had no life but one brief day in the sun. I should have made him truly mortal, like a mayfly who takes pleasure in the noon and at sunset folds his wings and drifts into dust. What we see here is, again, this jealousy of the angels who fell against the creation of man, and the fact that angels are not given free will from their point of creation, but have to earn it through initiations over time, and are only granted full free will when they reach the status of archangels. Whereas man was given free will from the start, and free will is considered the greatest gift because it is the ultimate key to being God. And so man, as the Christed evolution, is that child of God, becomes that son and daughter of God. It's the next step of initiation, and ultimately becomes Christed, the Christed one, like Jesus, and then moves on to higher and higher levels of cosmic initiation. There is the Buddhic plane, above the Christic plane, and then there's the Nirvanic plane, and beyond that the Paranirvanic plane, and so forth. And so the angels could not understand, those that fell, could not understand that man would be created lower than the angels, and yet crowned with greater glory and given free will from the start. And that was their point of contention from the beginning. And even if the angels who did not fall could not fully comprehend, they were secure in their obedience to the Father, to the will of the Father, and were willing to see and understand in the unfolding of cycles, having patience with the unfolding of the cycles. And Lucifer did not have that patience, and we know that a third of the angels fell within the galaxies that fell. And so a number of angels followed Lucifer and fell, and they either continued to live out their existence on the astral plane like Lucifer did, or have incarnated on earth. And then there are the angels who did not fall but came to rescue their fallen brethren, who also incarnated on earth. And so we find that there are many angels incarnate on earth, and most likely on many other planets. And the angels who incarnate on earth, because they are willing to put on this body of flesh and go through the initiations of mankind, can also ascend through that Christed evolution. Mother Mary is an example of one who is an archangel, Archie of the fifth ray of God, music, truth, healing, who came into embodiment 3 times, and when she made her ascension, then had that choice to either pursue the Christic evolution and move up in the initiations of the heaven world under that evolution, or to return to the angelic evolution. And she returned to the angelic evolution and is called the Queen of the Angels. And so, if Lucifer had been willing to embody, to have the humility to embody as a man or woman in physical embodiment and go through the initiations, he would also have achieved and received that opportunity to be crowned with greater glory. But he did not even attempt to fathom and take on those initiations. He preferred to be stuck and rebel. He says, "You once told me that hell is hell because no love can dwell there, and that love is impossible. That is true, but love is passive and hatred is active, and man is always active, like an insect which can never be still. Therefore, Michael, I shall win at last, for man is invariably enthusiastic and zealous, and languishes only when there is nothing to hate. Your brother, Lucifer." And what I would say about that is that that's the fallen consciousness within mankind, and that love is also an extraordinarily active force, because the entire universe is made of love, and all of the solar systems and planets spin on that action of love. Love is what holds everything together, so it's a very active force. It is only seemingly passive to those who are disgruntled and bitter. So let's see now what Michael responds. He says, "Greetings to my brother Lucifer, who weeps at his triumphs. Always you have fulminated because one thing was denied you in heaven, the knowledge of what lay in our Father's mind. None knows his mind, not I, not Gabriel. We do not resent that. That was reserved for you. We dared not question his knowledge, lest it blind us. But you were impatient and inquisitive, and you bestowed these miseries upon man." Perhaps what he's referring to here is that Luciel, or Lucifer, being an archangel of that second ray of wisdom, had more of an insight and an inroad into the mind of God than those angels who were serving on other rays, like Gabriel on the white ray of purity and Michael on the blue ray of faith. He says, "You have written that you are more merciful than our Father, for you would have denied man immortal life. you would also have denied him heaven. You would have denied him the one thing which makes him higher than the other animals on all the other worlds besides Terra, free will. Better it is for a man even to be damned than to be without that awesome gift. At least he had his choice. That alone gives him dignity, whether in heaven or in hell, and in spite of all your efforts, my poor brother, you cannot deprive the damned of dignity. They share your immortal existence, and for that you cannot forgive them. They have their garment of eternal life. Even a damned soul who grieves for what he lost is more than a body which expires with the breath. Would you prefer not to be, Lucifer? I look upon the constant striving in heaven with pleasure and affection. There is a perpetual coming and going of angels and the souls of the saved with news of new planets and universes and the wonders upon them. There is endless laughter and excitement and exchange of opinion and conjecture. Was it not the Christ who said that human ear has not heard and human eye has not seen the marvels which God has prepared for those who love him? Do I need to recall to you the aspect of heaven? Eternal noon, but not an unchanging noon. No vista remains the same. No vision of an eye is static. The only constant is love between angel and man, and God and angel, and God and man. All else changes, and always there is anticipation and work. Work is not an affliction as human hearts believe it is. When God condemned man to work, condemned in quotations here, he bestowed the next holiest gift after free will. Labor is prayer and achievement and the uncertainty of the achievement. Beauty is always in the process of becoming and is never fully attained. Joy is in the next turning, but the next turning promises greater joy. Love is never completely satisfied in heaven except for the surety of the love of God. It strains forever and happily after greater fulfillments. If a soul is weary after its sojourn on any of the worlds, it may rest in green shadows and peace until its weariness is spent. Then it must engage in the work of God, which is never completed. It so engages with eagerness and with a pleasure that is never satisfied. Was a soul without the love of men on the worlds, and did it languish for that love? It is poured into its immortal hands in heaven, and is appeased. Did it hope on the earth that it would see the faces of the lost beloved? It so sees and knows that never again can there be parting or ennui with love itself. Did it long for children to embrace when children were denied? Its arms are rich with children in heaven. Was it homeless before its ascent? It can create for itself the home of its lost dreams, whether humble or a palace. Did it desire to serve God to the utmost while in the flesh, yet could not fulfill that desire? The fulfillment is its own, ranging the endless universes and inspiring the sorrowful and lifting up the hearts of the sad and soothing the pain of the innocent and bringing good news to those who dwell in darkness. When I read this, I think, oh God, you are so magnificent. Oh God, you are so magnificent. Oh God, you are so magnificent. It can whisper in the winds and bring knowledge in the twilights and hope in the dawns. Each soul that it helps save and bring safely to God is an occasion for triumph, and its fellows triumph with it. Now, just as we were talking about earlier, that part within the psyche that has spiteful joy and rejoices in iniquity, let us cultivate that love for God within the brethren, and let us cultivate that rejoicing in the victories of others, for that is the consciousness of the heaven world that we aspire to and seek to become. all of which a man innocently dreamed in flesh is his at home, whether simple or magnificent. Best of all, he grows in accomplishment. Always there is the divine discontent, and never the security of hell. Always angels and men must strive in heaven. There is not one congregation, for in congregations there is conformity, and the soul cannot exist in sameness. Each soul is an individual and resembles no other, and serves no other. It serves its own need, and God is its need, and though it attains God, it never fully envelops or knows him. There is the most splendid dissatisfaction, its happiness, for what is completely possessed is a weariness. Victory is nothing when victory is entirely attained. You have seen the misery of conquerors on all the worlds, when there was nothing else to conquer, but none conquers in heaven save God, and who knows if he fully conquers. Above all, in heaven there is no exhaustion, no tiredness of spirit, no repletion. There is eternal youth and endless speculation. You have said that love is passive. If it is, then it is not love at all, but only selfish desire or a momentary engrossment. It is peaceful, and that is true, but it is not the peace of death. It is surety, but still it is not the surety of the grave. It must eternally be sought and eternally found, with new aspects and new delights. The music of heaven is the voices of those who have seen a new face in love, and marvel that they had not seen it before. The city of God is not like unto your city, O Lucifer, for there is no gross pleasure in it, no obscene appetites. All that was beautiful and beguiling and enchanted on the worlds is greatly magnified in heaven, and always changing, offering new enticements. It is never the same, while it is always the same. You will scornfully say again that that is a paradox. But there is infinite delight in paradoxes. Only absolutes are rigid, and rigidity is the true death of the spirit. But one absolute reigns in heaven and the planets, and that is the absolute of God's love. All else moves with the soul and is part of it. One veil is lifted, but to reveal another veil of an even more enthralling color. Pursuit of the unattainable is the climate of heaven. There is no end of knowledge in heaven, no end of learning. The soul pursues new knowledge and learns forever. It does not stand like a marble image confronting changelessness. Its face is eternally lit with the fires and the colors of new universes and new aspirations and new adventures. It clamors to know, yet it can never know completely, and that is its reward. God is like an earthly father who constantly places new riddles before his children and smiles as they eagerly guess its secrets and learn its answers. There are always new books to read, new wonders to excite the imagination, new vistas to explore. When you were in heaven, you declared that this finally wearied you, for you said heaven was like a ball of silk, which was never fully unwound, and there was no hope of the unwinding. In short, you wish to make heaven a hell, where there is absolute fulfillment, and there is nothing more to be attained. A state of stasis is surely hell, as you have discovered to your sorrow. You wished to sleep, you said, and you rested on your great white wings of light. But you did not sleep. You wished to peer and understand that which is not understandable, even by archangels. You desired the ultimate. Alas, Lucifer, you have attained it. Your city resounds with success. Why, then, are you not content? Today, new worlds in time were born about one of my largest stars in my galaxy. You will, without doubt, visit them and attempt to corrupt their people. I pray that you will fail, not only for the sake of God, but for your own sake. Your brother, Michael. This concludes our reading for today. Thank you for listening. God bless you.